It's a harsh term, and that's why I'm using it. It's purposeful because it represents a harsh reality, and I want to tear the sugar coating off of it. People addicted to substances who live on the streets of Canada are putting themselves and other citizens in danger every day. Activists and bureaucrats and politicians dancing around the problem using euphemisms, refusing to acknowledge the harm caused by unchecked addiction, are killing people and making the catastrophe worse. I mean, unless a person's blind, they've noticed an explosion in the growth of street people in the last decade. We never used to see the types of street encampments or tent encampments have sprung up all over the place, and we never had to deal with the zombie-like groups of strung-out souls congregating at transit facilities and parks, alleys, schoolyards, every corner of the city centers. The vast majority of these people, and this is what we got to get down to, they're either addicts or suffering from mental health disorders or both. If we want to help these people, we got to begin by accepting what their conditions are. Civic politicians and their associated bureaucrats are the worst. They use every term they can to deny reality. People went from being called homeless to unwell to unhoused to my personal favorite, vulnerable people. Well, these vulnerable people stabbed people in 2 separate incidents at the same LRT station in Calgary last week. These vulnerable people have set brush fires at their encampments, and they have propane tanks there. They've also caused spikes in property crimes as they steal anything they can to feed their addiction, and they create a thriving market for organized crime as they consume illicit drugs. Vulnerable people indeed. Look, I don't want to crap on addicts here. The people on the streets need our compassion and they need our help. We have a social obligation to help the folks suffering out there, and funds directed towards addiction treatment and expanding long-term mental health facilities are dollars well spent. We won't be able to help them, though, if we keep pretending that addiction isn't a problem. It was maddening watching Calgary News this week as legacy outlets reported on a vandalism rampage committed by an addict where he did tens of thousands of dollars of damage to cars. And I watched them get a quote from an idiot advocate for the homeless talk about how this was an issue caused by high rents. I wish I was making this up. Look, the guy's an addict and he was nuts. He should be in an institution. He doesn't have a rental problem. The delusional dolts from the enablement cult have been blaming the explosion of crime and street person populations on everything from capitalism to racism to climate change, all while refusing to admit it's the damn addiction. A late-stage addict, whether it's fentanyl, meth, heroin, or crack, is incapable of finding a job or maintaining a home. They do indeed need to be taken from the streets if they're to be treated, but they aren't in any condition to live within any form of long-term housing unless they've been treated, despite what smooth-brained housing-first activists claim. Another term that should be stricken from all public discourse is social disorder. The proper term is crime, and it's getting out of control. Hatchet attacks, robberies, and fentanyl dealing aren't a disorder issue. They're bloody crimes. Apologists for the havoc they have fostered in the streets through addiction enablement policies often try to blame citizens by saying it's a perception of unsafety. Really? You know, when a senior or a woman has to run the gauntlet of addicts in various states of frenzy just to get to work, it's more than just a perception of unsafety, and they shouldn't have to deal with it. In Nanaimo, the local government went full enablement ideology and managed to create one of the most dangerous small cities in Canada. While the city has a beautiful backdrop, it has become a dump. Because the fools in city administration felt the risk was only a perception issue, they allowed an addiction enablement facility to be set up next to their city hall. Now the imbeciles are calling for a fence to be built around City Hall because they're surrounded by out-of-control addicts and they feel unsafe. Maybe they just perceive it. Enablement advocates blame the deaths of addicts on what they call a toxic supply. They live in a mythical bubble state where they believe that addicts would be just fine if they could just get pure drugs. This is like those nasty additives the drug dealers put into the supply, which kill people. Look, there's no such thing as a safe supply of meth, fentanyl, heroin, or crack for an addict. Addiction is a progressive condition causing addicts to continue to seek higher doses until they finally overdose and die. Speaking of that, the term's overdose. And even the most pure of drugs will cause it. The sound of sirens are ubiquitous. I don't know why I put those words in my own monologues. They just kill me. In urban areas, as ambulances constantly respond to overdoses. Meanwhile, people suffer and potentially die waiting emergency services and hospital spaces because they're tied up with addicts. The addiction epidemic's only going to get worse as authorities refuse to acknowledge the realities associated with it. If we do truly care about the addicts, we got to start speaking bluntly about it and deal with it directly, even if it means forcible confinement. It's a complex problem and won't be solved by simplistic souls who haven't the courage to call a junkie a junkie. No serious social problem has ever been solved with Pollyanna attitudes and euphemisms. So take that and put it in your crap pipe. Smoke it.